All right, today the question is about if mathematics is an ideology or a perspective, a type of perspective. And mathematics is called the queen of the sciences because it is the language that rules science, but mathematics is not itself a science. And then scientists will often defer to mathematics, and so they will say nothing is proven in science except in mathematics. And then in mathematics, the most proven theorem with the most examples of it proof, different examples, is the Pythagorean Theorem. And it's also called the power axiom set. And it's considered possibly the very first proof in Western mathematics from the early Greek mathematicians. It wasn't from Pythagoras, but it was from Archytas and Eudoxus. But the irony being that the Pythagorean theorem actually originated from music theory. And if you really study the music theory, then you realize that there is a noncommutative Pythagorean theorem proof. And I realized this as I was reading an article about the rational number ratio proof for the Pythagorean theorem. And so that proof I realized relies on another factor of time, like a second level of time. And so that second level of time meant that the proof had to be actually non-commutative. And I sent the details to math professor Lou Kauffman, and this was late at night, maybe like 11 o'clock or something. Or no, it was actually later. It might have been. Anyway, I immediately got a response from him soon after saying, you mean this? And he actually had a non-commutative proof of the Pythagorean theorem that he had just figured out. And it also proved the Dirac relativistic quantum foundation of reality. And this has to do with the fact that the Einstein's relativity is just an extension of the Pythagorean theorem. And there's even a book called From Pythagoras to Einstein. And so I was surprised that I had this synchronicity with math professor Louis Kauffman, because he had not even published his mathematical proof of the noncommutative Pythagorean theorem. And I responded back, actually, I was thinking of this other article in noncommutative geometry that had given a different noncommutative Pythagorean theorem proof. And most mathematicians will say that, well, mathematics works, and it works so effectively that therefore it is a universal truth of not just on Earth, but the whole universe. And this is called the Platonic view of mathematics, that the truth of mathematics is inherent to reality in not a materialistic sense, but in a conceptual, intellectual sense that Plato called the realm of forms. But what's interesting about the Platonic realm of forms is that if you look at the foundation of that claim, it's based on the idea of symmetry. And Plato's argument about symmetry was that it's self-evident, so that if you look at your body, then obviously your two eyes are symmetrical, and your two hands are symmetrical, and your 2 feet are symmetrical. And therefore, the number 2 originates as a unit of symmetry. And this is what Plato called two-ness, and that the concept of two-ness exists before actual number, and it's like a symmetric unit of two-ness. And this is the foundation of the square root of 2 as an irrational number. And the continuum, the geometric continuum, is based on symmetry. But again, if you understand the secret music origin of the Pythagorean theorem, that basically it's from the major second music interval as 9/8, originating from from 9/4 that was halved into the same octave, and the 9/4 was from 3 halves being squared, and the 3 halves being the perfect fifth is the first overtone resonance of the root tonic, and the octave as the same pitch. And so the 9/8 cubed is the first approximation of the square root of 2 as an irrational number for the geometric continuum. And it's also called the tritone in music theory, and it's considered the most dissonant music interval. And in Plato's theory, it was also called the tyrant. And so each citizen was valued as 9/8 as the major second music interval, but the state as the government was like the scale as the octave, and so for the scale to fit inside the symmetry of the octave, then each citizen had to compromise themselves for the good of the state, and this meant the approximation of 9/8 cubed as the square root of 2, but this created democracy as a symmetric, equal-tempered social harmony of the logarithms. But it also eventually creates the tyrant as the square root of 2, or the tritone, the most dissonant music interval. So in Western philosophy, you have the mathematics tied to the political system, whereby democracy is actually the foundation of an inverse exponential function for exponential wealth growth of the elite. And so most people don't realize that this is inherent to the Western mathematics as a science, that it's tied into the political economy from the Platonic philosophy. And this is explained in musicologist Professor Ernest McLean's book, The Pythagorean Plato. So there was a recent paper in the science journal Quanta about how the thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, has been redefined and proven based on quantum physics, and more specifically the quantum information. And this was already explained really in Marlon Scully's book, The Demon and the Quantum, or maybe it's The Quantum and the Demon. I have the book over in my bookshelf, but I recently mentioned this book to Jack Sarfati, the quantum physicist, and well, he's a physicist in general. He also does relativity, but he said he knew Marlon Scully, and they had worked together, and he was going to read this book on the quantum thermodynamics, and it's a really excellent book, and I can't really do it justice right now. I think I already did a video on it, but essentially in quantum physics with the information, it comes out of the quantum uncertainty principle, where the momentum is directly proportional to the quantum frequency, and so then you have the frequency is inverse to the time, and you have time as a linear operator, and this creates the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But the time frequency originates from a noncommutative inner cross product of the 4x4 matrices using the imaginary number. And so this was Lou Kauffman's big point about the Pythagorean theorem, is that there's this second level of time based on the imaginary number that's inherently non-commutative, because you have to include your own measuring process in the science, and therefore mathematics is inherently unapplied science. It's not, or unapplied, it's not a pure science. And of course, it's not considered a science. It's considered the language of science. But most people consider mathematical theorems to be a pure just study of patterns as a philosophy. But Simon Stevin in the 16th century, he was the first to introduce logarithms in a rigorous manner. And his whole argument was that, well, if you don't use irrational numbers, then it would take you an infinite amount of time to actually do the rational number convergence, because you can make it infinitely more precise. And so there's no point in depending on the actual measuring process when you can use an inverse inductive logic for a convergence as a series. And on the face of it, this seems like a really valid argument if you are ignoring the non-commutative time frequency music origin of the irrational numbers from the Pythagorean Theorem. So there was this great cover-up in the original origin of mathematics that math professor Lou Kauffman, Luigi Borzicchini calls the, quote, deep pre-established disharmony as the, quote, guiding evolutive principle of science. And I had a very nice email conversation with him a few months ago, even though he's retired now, but he's still publishing on the cognitive origins of mathematics. And so to bring it back to the original question, is mathematics an ideology? Well, again, nobody can discount the fact that math works. It works excellent, but when you take into account the thermodynamics as defined by information as the measuring process, then you have to consider what Roger Penrose points out, that the entropy of matter is the opposite of the gravitational entropy. And so all the technology we create using mathematics is to decrease the entropy of matter and to increase what we perceive as order on Earth. But in fact, as Penrose points out, life on Earth originates from the negative entropy of the as a gravitational potential or dark energy. And so therefore we're increasing the gravitational entropy on Earth through the standard symmetric mathematics of the continuum that's limited to the quantum uncertainty principle. And if we understand that the quantum uncertainty principle originates out of non-commutative time frequency that's actually non-local, then we can actually reverse the entropy of gravity and increase the negative entropy on Earth. And that's what meditation does, because you're relying on logical inference as the origin of what Penrose calls proto-consciousness. And so the proto-consciousness is also the formless awareness as a quantum force from the future. So it's pure information as an energy or a force before the amplitude is squared for the probability as an uncertainty. And so this is done through meditation, because listening, due to music non-commutativity, the listening process is fast.